What's up, everybody? Welcome in. It is Iowa Primetime Live right here, Iowa at the voice of college football. 19 days away from the Hawkeyes booting things off against Albany. We're your hosts, Josh Elmer, Zach Heine. So happy to have all of you alongside. Scott, I already see you out in the chat. Thanks for jumping in tonight. Of course, we've got a lot of reactions from Kids Day at Kinnick, the final open practice for the Hawkeyes before, again, booting things off in 19 days. But before we do that, before we jump into, okay, how did Mr. Mark Gronowski look, and what about those receivers, and on and on and on, let's welcome in a friend from Cyclone Fanatic, from Iowa Everywhere. Many of you probably familiar with one, Jake Brend, but we say, good evening, Jake. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys. We're so close to football season, so anytime that I get the chance to talk football, it just speeds up the clock. We're so close.
Yeah, the long wait's finally over.
We're in the last 5-minute TV timeout of the offseason.
Well, I'm so excited for you guys because you have an absolute banger right out of the chute, and I'm sure you've broken down this Iowa State, Kansas State Farmageddon just about every which way by now, Jake, but we're going to ask you to do that for us again one more time at least here tonight. Before we jump into the game itself and what can Iowa fans expect from Iowa State this season, I'm just curious, man, how are things going for you? You joined the Cyclone Fanatic team. You're a part of Iowa Everywhere. Just for you personally, how are things going, man?
Oh, man, it's been awesome. And what I've told everybody is that I'm having the time of my life right now, and there hasn't even been anything fun yet. We've had a bunch of nerdy stuff, and don't get me wrong. I love the media days. I love the twice-a-week coordinator press conferences. We talked to Dion Broomfield, the safety coach, and Hank Poteet, the cornerbacks coach today. But when you compare that to a game day, when you compare that to the feeling that you start to get on Wednesday or Thursday of a game week, it doesn't even compare. So it's been great so far, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, and that's great to hear, Jake. Let's jump right into this game. Iowa State gets to start off with a big game, obviously, in Ireland, Farmageddon against Kansas State. This is a great test for both teams, a couple of teams with top 25 already aspirations this season. So just from a general point of view, what's the Cyclones' perspective going into this game, and how important do they view this game? Obviously, it's very important, but to kick off their season, how are they looking at this?
I mean, when you put it in terms of the average week 0 game, let alone the average week 1 game or week 3 game, it's the biggest in school history, and I don't even know how you argue that. When it comes to the betting odds for the Big 12, K-State is among the favorites, if not the favorite. Really, no matter what happens in this game, I see both teams in the mix in one way or the other come November. So you've got the tiebreakers that will be determined before 99% of the country has even played a game. And that in itself makes it massive. Then you factor in that it's a rivalry game. It's Iowa State's biggest conference rival, Kansas State. There's bragging rights. There's not a lot of friends of Iowa State and K-State fans when it comes to social media or real life. So you factor in that, and then you add it's the first college football game of the season. Everybody around the country will be watching it because, don't get me started on NFL preseason stuff, it's the first real football game of the year, and everybody, no matter what your conference or team affiliation is, will be locked in. So it's an opportunity to spotlight both programs. And when you throw all of that together, it is an enormous game because you don't want to start 0-1, because if you start 0-1, you're pretty much 2 games back already of the conference race when you factor in the tiebreakers. It just doesn't get much bigger than this for a week 0 college football game.
What do you sense from just the buildup from the two fan bases for this game? Because we know, right, the Iowa State Cyhawk game, we all get here from the Iowa and Iowa State perspective what that means to both fan bases, what it means for the state. Iowa State and Kansas State have forged this nice little rivalry. And I think you're right in what you're saying. This being where it is on the schedule with all the eyeballs that are going to be on it, is this going to add something that even the Iowa State, Kansas State series hasn't seen yet?
Absolutely. I think what I mentioned with it being a standalone game, there's a couple other week 0 games, but there's nothing like this. It's the first week 0 top 25 matchup since 2002. So that it just doesn't happen every year. You'll get your Nebraska and your Northwestern and Ireland, and Navy played Notre Dame one year, but you just don't get games like this. And I think it does add something. The last 2 years, this game has been the last game of the season. And we all know, no matter where the season goes, the last game of the season is significant for bowl game rights. Iowa State and K-State have had a few years where it came down to those two teams when the conferences were selecting bowl games. So every single year, it feels like Iowa State and K-State are neck and neck, and I don't think this year's any exception. Iowa State did get to the Big 12 championship game last year, had their first ever 10-win season, and the sense that I've gotten from everybody in the program is that they weren't just satisfied with that, because they got embarrassed in the Big 12 championship on national TV, and Iowa State wants to get back. K-State, in my eyes, was disappointing last year. I think they should have been in Dallas with the roster that they had, and they weren't there. So these are two programs neck and neck that both have the same end goal, and everybody's end goal, of course, is winning a conference championship, but these are two teams that have realistic shots at doing it, and the loser of this will have a really, really hard time in an uphill battle to get back.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot on this show, Jake, about the quarterback position at Iowa, the question marks that have come into that with Mark Gronowski transferring, and we know Iowa's quarterback room has been anything but stable for the last 5 years or so. But Iowa State's quarterback room is quite the opposite with Rocco Beck returning for his junior year. He's really a known commodity. But what jumps do you expect Rocco to take this season? And do you think he's someone I haven't necessarily been checking too many of the preseason, NFL draft type. Is he someone that could be jumping up into that NFL draft in 2026 conversation? Or what are expectations for Rocco heading into his third year?
Yeah, I think Rocco has the tools, the talent to be an NFL draft pick. He's obviously got a lot of room to grow. He's had 2 really good years under center. His first year, there was a lot of production, but there was part of maybe a missing the big throw thing that he dealt with. Whereas last year, he made so many big throws. He led 4 game-winning drives of their 11 wins. That is pretty unheard of for a quarterback, but he did deal with a lot of inconsistencies last year. Threw 4 pick sixes, had a couple games where the first half it just really, really struggled and made the team have to climb out of a hole. And that's where I think his next jump is to be the same quarterback minutes 1 through 60, as opposed to the ups and downs and then having to turn it on for a miracle 2-minute drive to win the game. And I think he will do that. He dealt with some shoulder injuries last year and some weird, at Kinnick Stadium, his first 3 drives started inside the 5-yard line. That, you guys know what that wall is like at Kinnick Stadium. That's not an easy thing. So if the more that he can start games strong and start with confidence, I think he is poised to have a really good year that could cement him as one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the Big 12, which is where I think he is now. But there's a lot of good quarterbacks in that league, and he's got to grow and be up there production-wise and consistency-wise.
Jake Brend is in the house with us right here. Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Probably many of you are already familiar with Jake's work at Cyclone Fanatic, and of course, Iowa Everywhere. Truly is everywhere, and they keep adding to the arsenal over there. So many of you probably familiar with Jake and the team's respective work, but if not, go like, subscribe, follow those guys across the board to get Iowa State coverage and Iowa coverage as well, obviously, from Iowa Everywhere. What sense do you get from Iowa State fans about the importance of what this season could mean now and into the future? I just think about what Brock Purdy has been to this program, and now you've rolled it over into Rocco Becht, who does look like a potential NFL guy again at quarterback. So it feels like Coach Campbell has changed this program, and maybe there's even a chance to take another step this year. How does the fan base feel about that and those types of expectations?
Yeah, I think you made a really good point bringing up Brock Purdy. And what I think beyond the wins and owning every single record in Iowa State history, I think Purdy's best impact for me when I look back is his freshman year. He had NFL running back David Montgomery, NFL wide receiver Hakeem Butler. Those guys were gone. He had to reinvent. He turned Deshaunte Jones into a really good receiver. He turned Xavier Hutchinson into an NFL receiver. Breece Hall came along. And when I look at the weapons that he was able to be successful with at stage 1, at stage 2, at stage 3, that's what makes a great college quarterback to me. And Rocco's had Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll. Those guys are gone. Who are those next guys? And I think that's where a quarterback can really separate himself. And for Iowa State fans, I think the sense since Oklahoma and Texas left the Big 12 was that finally, for the first time in program history, they're on an equal playing field. Texas Tech spent a lot of money, but they're not a blue blood. There isn't really a blue blood in this conference that has separated themselves from the others. And I think last year and the first year without OU and Texas was a really good start. Of course, winning 11 games, getting to a Big 12 championship. But I think the sense around Ames and for Iowa State fans is, why not? Why can't Iowa State become one of those 4 or 5 top programs in the conference? And I think that's what's at stake, is to show that it wasn't a one-trick pony. It wasn't a one-hit wonder in 2024. They want to go out, win 9, 10, 11 games again and show we're here to stay and we can compete at the top of the Big 12. And that's what I think Matt Campbell's focused on. That should be the goal of the program, the goal of the fan base.
Yeah, and we'll kind of shift gears to the Cyhawk game this year. It's always a big game for bragging rights in states between these two fan bases and these two schools. But the game is in Ames this year, and Iowa State has kind of struggled in Ames against Iowa the last couple of years. The last 2 victories in the series have been on the road at Kinnick Stadium. Do you read anything into that? And what's the sense around the team heading into the game this year, being in Ames and wanting to protect home turf?
Yeah, there's going to be more pressure on Iowa State this year. There's no doubt. It's been 2012. That was the last time, 2011 was the last time that Iowa State won a Cyhawk game at home. There hasn't been a home team to win in this series since 2018, believe it or not. It's been a long time coming. And I think those struggles are a real thing when you factor in how they've happened. 2019, Iowa State goes out, scores, there's the rain delay. And then there's another rain delay, and it was a weird game. 2021, I still think that was the most pressure that I've ever felt on a team that entire season. And it was definitely felt that day when Iowa came in and dominated, start to finish. And I think those are real question marks that have to be answered. And there will be pressure on Iowa State to win that game. I think these two teams are pretty equal on paper. Iowa might have a couple more question marks that we won't know until that game because they'll have only played an FCS opponent. But we know the Cyhawk game always comes down, it feels like, to a touchdown or less, and I expect the exact same thing this year. And it'll be on Iowa State to rise to that occasion, not throw a pick six, not have your NFL running back fumble the ball at your own 1 and Jay Higgins return it for a touchdown. That's where Iowa State has to kind of stay out of their own way. That's how I view this game this season.
Jake Brend in the house with us from Cyclone Fanatic from Iowa Everywhere. Okay, so we know about wide receiver. How are the Cyclones going to replace there? What other questions do you have about this team that you feel like needs to get answered?
I think if you just drop me in a time machine for any year, I'm always going to say offensive line. They're under year 3 of Ryan Clanton as he came over from UNI as the offensive line coach. And they've made clear strides from year 1 to year 2. And it sounds like on all accounts they should be making another jump this year. But how big of a jump, how much of a jump in the run blocking game, that has been a problem. So the offensive line it's always a concern to me until proven otherwise. And that's pretty uniform across college football, I think. But for Iowa State specifically, a good offensive line of course, makes the run game better. And when the running game is better, that makes the passing game better. As far as the other side of the ball, I just think that defensive front, Iowa State last year, dead last in the conference in sacks, second worst rushing defense. That has not been the norm under John Haycock as the defensive coordinator. Iowa State is almost always towards the top of the league in those two stats. And last year, they just weren't good enough. Some of that was having linebackers first, second, third, and fourth string injured, and you were playing walk-ons and true freshmen from 8-man and Class A football. But I think that front seven itself, that is the biggest question on, one, can they get to the quarterback? Can they stuff the run? And that should be able to make their defense return towards the top of the conference. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen yet. We know Dom Orange in the middle is going to start as the nose guard, and that's a given. He's elite. He's one of the best in college football. But the edge guys, there's 6 guys vying for 2 spots, and we'll see who plays, and we'll see who can be a difference maker, or maybe a better question would be if they can be a difference maker.
Yeah, and there's certainly questions on that defensive line with Iowa State, but there's not as many questions in that defensive backfield. Jeremiah Cooper and Jontez Williams, a couple of guys that were named Big 12 preseason all-conference players. So just tell Hawkeye fans a bit more about those two in particular and just what they mean to this Iowa State defense.
Yeah, Jontez Williams, he has the makings of a top 4 round pick in the NFL draft after this season if he's able to do anything close to what he did last year. And his stats probably aren't going to be good. He most likely will not be thrown at. The second corner spot, that's wide open. They've got a transfer from Lindenwood, Trey Bell. They switched a receiver, Benny Nagoye, over to that side. They've got a couple redshirt freshmen that got opportunities last year. But that second corner spot is going to be a question, not only who plays, but who will get picked on and if they can hold your own. I know Iowa fans have dealt with that a lot, where you had Cooper DeJean on one side, but TJ Hall might be getting picked on when he was a young guy, or whoever it is. That's a big thing. The safety depth, you lose a couple 4-year players who are all conference level, and Jeremiah Cooper coming back really helps that cause. There's a lot of young guys that have played a lot of football that need to emerge as 4-quarter players. But overall, I typically don't worry too much about the secondary because I feel like that's a position that Iowa State has reloaded time and time again under Matt Campbell. But there are a couple questions outside of the Big 12 players, or the all Big 12 players, in Jontez and Jeremiah Cooper.
Jake Brend hanging out with us, the chief content producer of Cyclone Fanatic from the middle of June of this year, and obviously going forward, the 2024 Iowa Sportscaster of the Year, Mr. Jake Brend, also in the house, of course, as well. Jake, just a couple more from me, and then we'll let you cut loose and, get to enjoy your Monday night. I know there's no Cubs to worry about tonight.
Thank God.
We'll let you get out and enjoy the Monday all the same. The Big 12 as a whole, obviously Iowa State, this could be a Big 12 championship game preview between Iowa State and Kansas State right out of the chute, which, of course, makes it so fun. But what are just your thoughts of the Big 12 as a whole this year going in?
It's fun. It's similar to what you're seeing in the Big 10 in the middle, where after you go Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, after that, you could make the argument that Iowa, Michigan, USC, Nebraska, you can make the argument that all those teams are the 4th best team. And that's what I think the Big 12 is dealing with from 1 through 8. Arizona State's the defending champs. They bring back 18 starters. They should be really, really good again, but they lost a guy who won them 3 games by himself last year in Cameron Scadaboo. K-State, I think they've got the best roster up and down in the conference, but Avery Johnson has been prone to make crucial mistakes at the worst possible time. Texas Tech went out and spent $50 million on their roster. I still don't love their quarterback, Baron Morton, and it's a program that hasn't won 10 games since Mike Leach was there. So that it's one of those things where I've got to see it to believe it. TCU, Baylor both bring back a lot. Utah, after a disaster of a year, fired their OC, brought in a new offensive coordinator, quarterback from New Mexico, a lot of weapons. They've got a chance to be towards the top of the conference. There's just a lot of teams that if you told me you could pick from 9 of them, I wouldn't call you dumb for saying that there's 9 teams that could possibly play for a Big 12 championship. And at this point, I don't know who I would pick. I probably should make a pick. And I think I'd lean K-State at this point. But again, if you told me that Avery Johnson took a safety in the fourth quarter over in Dublin to lose the game, it wouldn't shock me in the slightest, to say the least.
Yeah, and last question for me, Jake, and thank you for coming on. We really appreciate having you on the show. So, we know about the big name players for Iowa State, Rocco Beck, John Williams, Dom Orange. We talked about them tonight. But who are a couple players that maybe aren't getting talked about as much, or maybe aren't known as well by the casual college football fan that we're going to be talking about after the season as well? They had a really good year for Iowa State, or they're a reason why Iowa State made the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, so you mentioned Rocco, John and Dom Orange. I think those are clearly 3 of the 5 best players on the roster. I think to round out that top 5, it's 2 tight ends, Ben Bramer and Gabe Burkle. Bramer was a freshman All-American 2 years ago, dealt with a lot of injuries last year, and he's a player that if he wanted to transfer after his first year, he could have gotten a lot of money at an SEC school or a big-time Big Ten program. And he's probably someone that's flying under the radar nationally just because if you look at his production last year, it's not great because he missed half the season. And I think there's a shot that he's the best NFL prospect on that roster. And Gabe Burkle is a guy who emerged when Bramer was out. Burkle had 2 catches going into November of last year and finished with the 3rd most catches on the team. He emerged as a really, really good tight end that could potentially be an NFL guy as well. So I think those are 2 names that you could go to the end of the year and say, wow, Bramer and Burkle, they combine for more catches than the top 2 wide receivers. And I think those are definitely names that people will be watching and talking about all year long.
Okay, enough of this silly football stuff with one final question on our way out the door here with you, Jake. The Cyclone fan base, what do they think about playing this game in Dublin? And what do you know about Dublin, Ireland? Have you gotten any recommendations on where to get a beer or where to eat? Well, what do you know about Dublin, man?
Well, I've already got my tour scheduled for the Guinness Factory. I think the question is more or less if I'll go to the Guinness Factory and maybe how many times will I go to the Guinness Factory or how many Guinnesses I'll have over the course of the week. That's what I'm looking forward to. I've never been to Ireland. I've never been to Dublin. I'm so excited to sightsee, and I've got a lot of Irish blood in me, so about a quarter of my family comes from Ireland, so I'm really excited to see those way long-term ancestry roots while I'm over there. But the general fan base, there's a lot of people going. I know that Iowa State has sold out their allotment of 10,000 tickets. I'd expect there to be probably a little more than that going. And it'll probably feel like a bowl game where you've got a bunch of people traveling to this new place and drinking Guinness. But once the game kicks off, it is not a bowl game. There is no, if you lose this game, well, who cares about a bowl game? It is the season. And that's where I think Iowa State fans might start to feel that Friday when they're over there. Like, oh, this has been a great vacation. This has been a lot of fun. But the whole trip could be ruined tomorrow. Or it could easily turn into the best trip of my life if Iowa State wins and we're all flying back to Iowa on Sunday coming off of a win. Either way, I'm so excited to experience Dublin and make a little vacation out of a game trip.
If you're a sports fan, like I'm sure, and obviously reporter, but sports fan like many of us are, it's tough to talk your mind into, well, it's still going to be a great trip even if they don't win the game. It's like, it kind of feels empty if they don't go win the game. But man, I'm looking forward to it. Jake, you're the man. I appreciate you taking time out for us. We're thankful for you doing that, and can't wait to watch and follow your coverage at Cyclone Fanatic. We'll probably be knocking on that door in a couple of weeks' time to get ready for a Cyhawk game too.
Oh, please do. Always happy to come on and support you guys.
Jake, thanks, man. Have a good night, buddy.
Appreciate it, Jake. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for having me.
That right there, Jake Brend of Cyclone Fanatic. And, of course, many of you, I'm sure, know Iowa everywhere as well. Part of the Brain Trust out there bringing you all that great Iowa State and Iowa content every single day. Thanks, Jake, for carving out some time for us. I really do appreciate it. And ask and you shall receive. Many of you said, yeah, we want to hear from the Iowa State slant before this season boots off. And they got a massive one versus Kansas State. What struck you from the remarks right there from Jake?
I mean, first of all, lots of great stuff from Jake. He's one of, the best up-and-coming, rising stars in the Iowa sports media business. And so a lot of great stuff from him. Obviously, someone who's been around the team a lot this offseason. And for me, it was really the conversation about the defensive line and the question marks there. Because I knew about Dom Orange and how good he was on that line, but some of the question marks that Iowa State's got at those edge positions, I think is something that really struck out to me, and that's something that they're gonna have to figure out and during their game in Dublin and then with Iowa as well. And so seeing how they fill those holes, and then the Rocco Becht conversation, and just how Iowa State fans view him as the quarterback and as a prospect, I think is something that was really interesting to hear, because I think we all have a very high amount of respect for Rocco Becht and what he's done with that program. I mean, he beat Iowa last year on the road, which is not something that's easy to do. And so, hearing how Iowa State fans view him and his potential, what they expect from him in year 3, I think was really, interesting to get a further grasp on, because that's really at the end of the day with football, like you can talk X's and O's until, your mouth falls off. But if your quarterback isn't, up to snuff, we know this as Iowa fans, it's going to be really hard to win games consistently at the biggest level. And so getting insight into that was really, really good to hear.
It's for Iowa State, it just starts off in a hurry with that week 0 game that could very well be a Big 12 championship game preview, or the play your way in to the Big 12 championship game, the tiebreaker game between Iowa State and Kansas State. It's kind of wild if Iowa makes the improvements offensively, Zach, that we hope that they do make and that they can make with Gronowski and company. You could be Iowa State looking up 1-2 pretty quickly and have really not played all that poorly if Iowa is a top 25 type team, and if Kansas State is a Big 12 championship contender in their own right. So then you look beyond that for Iowa State and Arizona at Cincinnati. I think Colorado's set to take a step back this season. BYU, okay, we'll see. Arizona State toward the back portion of their schedule, and Kansas look like challenging games. But you could really make your hay after a poor start, and it'll be, for Iowa State's perspective from their vantage point, if it does go a little wonky to start versus Kansas State and versus Iowa, how do they keep that thing together, or does it come apart a little bit after, again, playing several good opponents early?
Yeah, and it's something that I really like about that schedule. I want to throw it back to you and to the people watching us tonight. Thank you for tuning in, by the way. What are your thoughts on Iowa opening with an FCS team versus you look at Iowa State opening up with Kansas State? You look at a team like Ohio State playing Texas in week 1. Like I'm of the mindset where I kind of prefer a challenge right away. I want to see what the team is made of. I don't learn a whole lot from an FCS game. Like, it's a game, I think, with almost nothing to lose to gain, but everything to lose, really. If you, in terms of not in terms of losing the game, but in terms of an injury, in terms of things like that. Like, I really prefer when Iowa at least plays a lower tier FBS team. So I'm curious what you think about that. I know some people are of the mindset that they just want to get in and rolling with a win and get some players comfortable in the season before they go and take on Iowa State. But I'm just curious from your point of view, and people in the comments as well, like, would you prefer Iowa to open up and play a Nebraska in week 0 or week 1 and then get into the season? Or do you kind of prefer the ramp up versus an FCS team or a lower level FBS team?
It's a good question. It seems like a lot of coaches historically have answered the question by saying, no, we want that tune-up game, right? Yeah. There's no NFL preseason for us. We get camp. And in the case of Iowa, we get an open spring practice and we get a kids' day at Kinnick where you can kind of sort of simulate a game day, but it's not the same, right? So historically, coaches, I think, have made it pretty clear that, look, we want that ramp up, that get right game early. But me as a fan, I love the start right out of the chute against somebody, in this instance, for Iowa State with the Kansas State. I would have to think, and you'd love for this to be the case, Zach, regardless, but look, Coach Campbell has had Iowa State's full attention all spring, all summer, because they know what they've got in week 0 coming their way against Kansas State. So I do wonder if there's, especially if you win, right? If you go play that game, if it's in Dublin, if it's in Manhattan, if it's in Ames, in the case of Iowa, if it's in Iowa City, or wherever it may be, and you go win that game, then you've had your full attention throughout the spring, throughout the summer. And, oh, by the way, boom, it's a launching off point from that point forward. So I would love to see the daunting schedule and right out of the chute, and dependent upon how things go into the future with schedules, with the Big Ten, SEC Alliance, and some of the other things that have been floated out about there, Zach, I wouldn't mind the Cyhawk game being an annual, right from the word go, game between Iowa and Iowa State. I think that could be fun, as you just know that that's the first game on your schedule.
Yeah, that would be a blast, wouldn't it? Just open up right away, open that can of worms with Iowa versus Iowa State week 1 or week 0. Just don't take that game over to Ireland, please. Keep that one in state. We don't. That's a game that needs to be played on the state of Iowa's soil. That's my only request with that. But if you want to move it up to week 0, week 1, I have no complaints with that. I think our main man Kelvin in the comments makes a really good point there about Iowa has a lot of tough games this year. They play Iowa State on the road. They've got 3 college football playoff teams from last season on the schedule, and then those rivalry games are no joke either. You have to go at Wisconsin, to go at Nebraska this year. They get Minnesota as well. So I mean, it's a tough schedule for Iowa, and so a chance to kind of get the wheels turning against Albany and get people into a rhythm, and then hopefully set them for most of that second half, all of your starters, and get ready for Iowa State. I think that's not something that Kirk Ferentz is going to complain about at all. But as a fan, as you mentioned, I would love to see Iowa just kind of jump into the fray with a big game. And, it's just tough when you look at the rest of the week 1 schedule, when you see Texas, Ohio State, and you see all these other games between top 25 or teams, hoping to be in the top 25 at the end of the season. And then it's, Iowa gets to play Albany. All right. That's, it's great. It's Iowa football back. I will never complain about Iowa football on the TV. But we're going to have to see how much time I can fill in that post-game show, because, it's going to be a lot of probably a lot of previewing week 2 against Iowa State. But it's Iowa football back on the TV. If they're playing Albany, if they're playing Nebraska, if they're playing Wartburg, I don't really care. I just want to see Iowa, back on the TV. And so I don't really have an issue with it.
Trust me, you will have plenty to talk about, regardless of the fact that it is Albany. Though I agree with most everything you said. I'd love to see something a little tastier than that. And at some point in college football, I'd like to see some of those pay games go by the wayside. That's just me. I know that it's challenging enough, and I understand what Kelvin's saying out there, and others feel that way too. But me as a viewer, as a media member, as a consumer, give me more of the Cyhawk game and more Big Ten games versus Albany, UMass, and the like. Wanted to say thank you to Scott chiming in with a super thanks. You can do that too. Buy us a super thanks. That helps support Iowa Primetime Live and Iowa at the Voice of College Football, which ultimately, helps keep us on the air, right? That supports us, and we appreciate you, Scott. Thanks for doing that. At the VOCFB is where you can follow the Voice of College Football on Twitter. And you can follow me. I've got an account that has about, 10 followers. I just made it the other day. I wanted an Iowa-specific account. I've had my radio account for years and years and years and have not made an Iowa-specific account. I have now, and please help me to not have it appear quite as humiliating as it currently looks at the moment right now with its following. I'm at Josh on Hawks, so you can follow me over there, and he is at Zach_Heine, where his Twitter following much more impressive than mine. It dwarfs at Josh on Hawks at the moment. Let's say hello to the people, and then let's dive fully into Kids Day at Kinnick. I know, Zach, you were like me. You've up and down. You've watched the tape. Scott says, hello, Josh and Zach. Hello to all the fellow Hawkeye fans. My main concern is, can Mark Gronowski and the receivers get it all together in just the one season? Because, that's all we've got with him. Go Hawks. Let's table that. Keep your mind on that, Zach, and we'll revisit it here in just a moment. Rock 82. The Cyhawk game will be decided at the line of scrimmage. And isn't that so often the case in these rivalry games? And certainly
very fitting. It's very fitting for an Iowa State game. Yeah.
Kenton says, what's up, fellas? Go Hawks, baby. Kelvin says, good pod, either to us or to Iowa everywhere. Could be for. It
could be both, maybe. It could be both.
Okay, so let's rip the Band-Aid off now.
Yeah.
Now that we've kind of, several minutes into the program tonight, we've done our how do you do's. What stood out from Kids Day at Kinnick? I'll jump in here first, if you don't mind, Zach.
Yeah, feel free.
I said going into the weekend that, look, you have to expect some rust with Mark Gronowski. To anticipate that there wouldn't be any rust with your new quarterback, Mark Gronowski, who is coming off an offseason shoulder cleanup, would be unrealistic. And I think we saw some of that rust from Mark Gronowski. I thought at times he was a little inaccurate. He, of course, had the bad decision play, though many are pointing out, hey, Trevor Lauk probably could have done a better job on the screen that wound up as a pick six interception for Cohen Intringer. But that's a decision that I feel like, hey, Gronowski can't make all the same. Whether Lauk didn't do his assignment properly, which I don't think that he did, that's a decision that Gronowski, he just can't make. You can't have those types of interceptions. So there was some, it's got to get cleaned up. I expected for there, Zach, to be some, it's got to get cleaned up from the quarterback, and I thought we saw that from Gronowski. But we also saw some sizzle. I was hoping that we would see some sizzle in the pass game, and we saw it with the 44-yard connection to Seth Anderson. We saw it from another 30-yard plus pass, the deep corner to Reese Vander Zee. A couple of candidates, Zach, that we expect to be big puzzle pieces of this Iowa offense. So I thought that was a great sign for Gronowski, for Iowa, that each of those two receivers that we expect to be two of the big three receivers for the Hawkeyes, they delivered at Kids Day at Kinnick.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that stood out to me was the name you mentioned earlier. Trevor Lauk was the left tackle to begin at Kids Day. Looks like now he has pole position to be that starting left tackle in week 1 versus Albany, which is a battle we've been kind of watching all offseason long. Jack Dotzler was in there. We heard from Logan Jones that Cannon Leonard was kind of competing for that role as well. And so it looks like, at least as of right now, Trevor Lauck has that left tackle spot, as a starter. That could easily change by week one. That could change after week one, depending on performance. I think it would benefit Iowa to lock in a left tackle starter. You really don't want to be rotating your starting left tackles during the season. That's not something that usually leads to a bunch of success on the offensive line. And so if it is Trevor Lauck, let him run with the starting line and see how that goes. So that was a big thing that stood out to me. But as you mentioned, we saw the flash from Mark Gronowski with those with those deep passes to Anderson and Vanderzee, a couple of guys that were looking to make some plays on the offensive side of the ball. We saw the rest of the quarterback room look good as well. I know Jackson Stratton didn't play at Kitch Day. He's dealing with a bit of an injury, I believe, according to Kirk Ferentz. But we did see Hank Brown, and he looked pretty good according to other reports. Jeremy Hecklinski, the Wake Forest freshman transfer, also made some plays. I think he was the one who delivered that dime to Caden Weechin, Caden Weechin on offense, running routes, making catches down the sideline. That's really good to see for Iowa. I know that they've talked about wanting to use him in more in an offensive role, and so we'll see if that's something that they're going to just show off at Kids Day, or if they're actually serious about that and getting him on the field. I think that Albany game will be a big test of that theory. But yeah, just seeing Mark Gronowski make those plays and seeing the flash, that's what I wanted. I understand that there was going to be mistakes, the big six on the screenplay, but seeing the flashes of big play potential within the offense through the air was big for me, and also kind of getting our first glimpse into what that week one offensive line might look like. Hopefully, with Bo Stevens back there at left guard, he missed the Kids Day practice with an injury, so hopefully he's back in there. But it seems like Trevor Lauck is going to be that starter for now. But it's still a position that, until we see them go out and play well against some big name schools, going to be a question mark.
So you give me a yay or nay on my 5 takeaways. I just published this, by the way, a little while ago to run in conjunction with Iowa Primetime Live for us tonight. But I would appreciate it if you go follow and read my work, Zach's work, HawkeyesWire.com. We kind of already covered this, but you just give me a yay or nay if you think this is accurate. Mark Gronowski flashed some really good and some not so good.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this? And I want to delve a little deeper into this one right here. Seth Anderson appears primed for increased production.
Okay.
I'll
meet in the middle with you right there. I hope so. I hope that Seth Anderson is a breakout candidate here. He is someone who's been in the program the longest, I believe, out of any receiver. This is his 3rd year, I believe, in the Iowa football program. So he's someone who's been around a while. He understands playing in the Big Ten, understands playing for Iowa. We've kind of yet to see him put it all together in the regular season. Unfortunately, we've seen some flashes, but we have yet to see it happen in real games too often. And so I'm optimistic after the Kids Day performance. I'm hoping that he's someone that can step up and provide some depth behind Gill and Vanderzee and Phillips. But I need to see it a bit more consistently in real games before I give Anderson a resounding yay. So I'm going to settle on an A right now in the middle, hoping for the best, but needing to see a bit more.
You said Trevor Lauck appears to be in the pole position. They've been rotating those reps at left tackle, and George Barnett had said on Friday that Iowa, he said not to read too much into who was the starting left tackle at Kids Day, because everybody in that group of 3 has been getting some work with the number 1 left tackle slot and the backup left tackle slot and at left guard because of the Bo Stevens injury. But with Seth Anderson, can I talk you into this? That he's in the pole position as the number 3 receiver for Iowa.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't hear too much about Sam Phillips at Kids Day. I assume you mean 3 behind Gill and Vanderzee, or are you
correct?
Phillips? Yeah. Yeah. I didn't hear too much about Phillips at Kids Day. Obviously, we saw Vandersee make some plays, and we saw what Anderson did. So I could definitely be talked into it. Phillips is someone who I think is more of a slot receiver as it is. And so when it comes to Anderson's playing time, I think he'll be competing more for those backup roles on the outside. And I think he definitely has the pole position there as compared to a KJ Parker or someone like that. And so I think I could definitely be, talked into that. He's someone who he fits the mold of what Iowa wants to do in terms of, take a play action shot. He's one of those guys, him and Vandersee probably are your two guys that you feel the most confident about. Throw it up and go and get it. And so I could definitely be talked into it. I'm open. That Iowa State game is going to be huge for him. Can he make some plays on the road as a senior who's been in the program, who knows how much that game means to Iowa? Can he go on the road and make some plays there? That'll be really telling for me. But yeah, I could definitely be talked into that, and I hope that that's the case. With Seth Anderson, who seems, by all accounts, to be just a great guy and a great teammate in that locker room. So I'm really hoping that he gets that big breakout year this year.
Final season for Seth Anderson, and remember, he transferred in a couple of years ago from Charleston Southern. But I think your reservations with Anderson are totally fair. A season ago, injury limited him to just the 7 games and a couple of starts. He had just 5 grabs for 106 yards. And again, he's thought to be, dating back a couple of years ago, this big transfer addition at wide receiver that was going to help transform things, and it hasn't totally happened yet. In 2023, when he first came in, 11 receptions for 150 yards and a score. So he hasn't had that big season that matched the expectation of, hey, and I understand Charleston Southern is not Iowa, it's not Big Ten football, but he hasn't produced the 42 receptions for 612 yards and 7 scores that he had at Charleston Southern that you hope that he could create in Iowa City. But again, I'm not going to get too out over my skis from an open practice, though every once in a while I'm getting out over my skis a little bit from the open practice in the spring and Kids Day at Kinnick. I do see, though, the early trappings, Zach, the early signs that I think Seth Anderson, he appeared to me to have a pretty good rapport with Mark Gronowski, and maybe as good of a rapport as Gill or even Vandersee has so far. So I thought that was a notable development with Seth Anderson, that he just might be primed to make a lasting final impression. Okay, flipping over to the defensive side of the football, Shire and Intringer, we're looking for new defensive standouts with the rotating door of the couple of great linebackers, the Butkus Fitzgerald Award winner from a season ago, and Jay Higgins. And, of course, Nick Jackson was a triple-digit tackler a couple of seasons ago, and probably could have been that again if he really, really went out of his way to try to be a season ago. Nick Jackson, very productive his 2 years coming over from Virginia to Iowa. So there's a big hole for Iowa at linebacker. Defensive back, you're losing a lot of experience back there with Sebastian Castro, Schulte, and Harris, and you need a new star to emerge. I'm taking what we saw from Kids Day at Kinnick. This is not a shocking development, Zach, but Carson Shire was flying around. He forced a fumble. Intringer, of course, had the pick 6. He laid the lumber on Brevin Dahl at one point early in this Kids Day at Kinnick. I think we have the early makings of maybe Iowa's 2 biggest stars on the back 7 of this defense in Shire and in Intringer. I thought those 2 guys had great days defensively for the Hawkeyes.
I'm right there with you on those 2 guys. First of all, how about those Iowa linebackers making plays in their preseason debuts? Higgins and Jackson both with interceptions for their respective teams. And so it's good to see those guys who are kind of fighting for a roster spot on the fringe after going undrafted. Hopefully they're able to make it and contribute. I feel really good about Higgins. I don't know how he went undrafted. That was kind of ridiculous to me. But in terms of Iowa this year in 2025, I think those 2 names are names to watch. We know the Iowa linebacker room, it's going to be Harrell and Shire who are going to be the first 2 to get the crack at it. It's good to see Shire running around and making plays at that linebacker spot. And Entringer is someone that has really caught the attention of a lot of Iowa fans, going back to last year as well, when he was on the field more, he was making some plays, and we all kind of knew with Sebastian Castro and Quinn Schulte leaving town that he was going to get the chance to jump in and play. And so, seeing him make that play on the pick six, it wasn't a great job by Trevor Lauk, but it's still good to see Entringer make the play, jump the route, and take that for what would have been a pick six in a normal game. And it's two guys that are really important to this Iowa defense, and a back seven that's not bringing back a whole lot of experience. When you look at it, it's Xavier Wampa and it's TJ Hall, who's also been a little nicked up, according to Kirk Ferentz, with an injury. But outside of those two, it's a lot of new guys, a lot of guys who haven't played too many, starting snaps in big games. And so, it's good to see Shire and Entringer making some plays here early, and hopefully that can, carry over into the regular season.
Cody chimes in. My biggest concern for Iowa is left tackle. Coach Barnett said, hey, don't read into Kids Day at Kinnick, who's the starting left tackle. We're moving and mixing and matching guys around. So buy that or don't. My takeaway, Trevor Lauk got the left tackle start, but it's an ongoing race. Are you buying that from Coach? Are you buying that takeaway? Or are you saying, I think it's Lauk's job?
I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those things where I think they thought really deeply about this, and they knew that, people were going to be breaking it down regardless. And so Lauk was a decision that I would think, I still think that he has pole position. I don't think Iowa gains anything from playing games, at Kids Day practice, or we're going to, pull a bait and switch. And, Trevor Lauk's starting Kids Day practice, but it's never actually, really seriously being considered for the left tackle job. I really think that, they believe that Lauk is their best option at left tackle right now. And it's a battle. And so you don't want to come out and say he's our guy, and all of a sudden, you lose a Dotzler or a Leonard in terms of, their commitment in practice to trying to win that job. I think it's still open, but I do think that there is something to be taken away from Lauk getting that initial start here at Kids Day practice. And maybe we're reading too much into, a Kids Day practice, but we like to overreact to that kind of stuff and to, have takeaways from that. So I think it's really important, actually, that, Lauk was the opening day left tackle. And if you asked me to put money down right now, I don't really sports bet, but if you asked me to put money down right now on Iowa's left tackle in 19 days when they take the field against Albany, I would pick, probably bet on Trevor Lauk being that guy barring an injury, because it shows to me that there's some confidence in that room, whether it's from Ferentz or Barnett, that he can be that guy at left tackle. And starting him at that spot at Kids Day was a very strategic decision, I believe. And so I think he is someone that, as of right now, I would pick him to be that left tackle.
Just to give you the visual here, there's David Eichholt's tweet from over the weekend. Lauk, Leighton Jones with Bo Stevens, his concussion symptoms, recovery, if you want to call it recovery, going on, concussion protocol. Logan Jones, of course, who we know. Cade Pieper, no big surprise at right guard. And, of course, Jennings Dunker over at right tackle. The backups, at least for Saturday's Kids Day, Dotzler, left tackle. Bryce George, the Ferris State transfer at left guard. Myslinski, the center. Allgaier, right guard. And Leonard, the right tackle. So that's what it looked like for Kids Day at Kinnick. And apparently a lot of people came away impressed with the right side of Iowa's offensive line, Pieper and Dunker. That earned a lot of rave reviews from folks that were in attendance. That would be a positive takeaway. How about this? One final thought for me, a takeaway from my story, HawkeyesWire.com. Nathan McNeil continues to look really good for a true freshman running back, does he not? More flashes at Kids Day. Kamari Moulton and Terrell Washington Jr., they were not participants at this Kids Day, so that obviously gave some of the other running backs opportunities. Jazz Patterson, he fumbled one away during this Kids Day, so that was not great from Kids Day from the running back standpoint. But Nathan McNeil, man, he looks like somebody, 5'11", 203-pound Tampa running back who, of course, was awesome at Wiregrass Ranch his senior year, north of 1,000 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns as a senior. And he, dating back to the spring, Zach, and I think at this Kids Day practice again, McNeil looks like somebody to me that I'm not going to be all that shocked if he's earning some carries at times over the course of this 2025 campaign.
Yeah, he was really impressive at that Kids Day practice, and that's a really good sign for Iowa. I know we both love Kamari Moulton on this show, and he was named to that Doak Walker preseason award list. So he's someone that I think we feel pretty confident about in that room. But outside of that, there's some question marks about this Iowa running back room. Jazz Patterson was good in his small doses last year, but if you can't hold on to the football, you're not going to hold on to a starting role. And so that's something that Iowa's made very clear, that they don't really tolerate fumbling issues from running backs. No coach or program really does, but especially at Iowa, and the way that they've had to play football, the last couple of years, holding on to the ball is crucial. And so, and TJ Washington, there's questions about him. He was good in small doses, but I think that there's really an open battle for that backup running back positions, and who's going to be able to take or to spell Moulton when he's off the field. And so I think that Albany game again is really big for a guy like Nathan McNeil, because they can throw him out there in that game. They can see how he looks there, and I don't foresee him getting any carries against Iowa State barring injuries, but if he impresses enough against Albany and maybe against UMass as well, as we get into Big Ten play, that could be someone that really breaks out. We've seen freshman running back for Iowa really come onto the scene and play well. I think back to Tyler Goodson as a freshman, who was just you just couldn't keep him off the field. Like he was so impressive with his burst and with his speed that that's just someone that had to play. And so Nathan McNeil could force his way onto the field, which would be a good thing for Iowa to work behind Kamari Moulton. But that running back room is pretty open after Moulton. And so I think it's a really positive sign for Iowa that Nathan McNeil is someone who played really well. And it's exciting for Iowa fans as well to, see what they're going to do with that running back position. Obviously, replacing an All-American is no easy task, and it's going to take multiple guys to step up and play well to replicate that production. But all in all, it's a really good sign to see Nathan McNeil impressing at Kids Day. We'll see if he can do it in a regular season game here soon.
We will share Kirk Ferentz's thoughts with you coming up on Thursday night show. So hope you'll be around and back with us on Thursday night at 6 o'clock right here, Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the voice of college football. That'll be a ton of fun on Thursday as we inch ever closer, 19 days to booting this thing off, and obviously 12 days away from that game that we previewed with Jake Brend to open tonight's show of Cyclone, Fanatic, and Iowa everywhere, Iowa State, Kansas State. This is the final week without college football at the end of it, which is, man, that just warms the heart. So before we call it a wrap and a clean bow tie for tonight, any other takeaways that you had from Kids Day at Kinnick that we haven't touched on yet?
Maybe not from Kids Day at Kinnick, but the media day on Friday. I know we had a lot of that coverage at Hawkeyes Wire, but the injuries in the cornerback room from Kirk Ferentz was a big update. I mentioned TJ Hall dealing with a bone bruise. Kirk Ferentz seemed very grateful that it wasn't more. It seems like Iowa really dodged a bullet with Hall only out 1 to 2 weeks is what Ferentz said. It could have been a lot worse with that bone bruise. And then also dealing with an injury in that room is Watson, the other one of the backup cornerbacks, along with Shahid Barrows, who are going to be behind Hall and Deshaun Lee. And so it's not great when 2 of your 4 top corners in your room are dealing with injuries right before the regular season begins. I think that get of Shahid Barrows in the transfer portal is looking huge right now for Iowa to have someone who you feel a bit better about, some more established depth in that cornerback room if Hall or Watson have to miss some time. Watson has a soft tissue injury. Kirk Ferentz wasn't too specific with that, but the injuries in the cornerback room for me really stood out as it's not concerning yet, but are those guys going to be back for Albany? Are they going to be good to go for Iowa State? That's really the big question for me, because Hall especially is someone that is really being relied on to play a big role in this Iowa defense.
And Zach, the way that Kirk Ferentz and Phil Parker and just the collective Iowa brass, coaches, players, everybody over there from Kinnick, the way they're talking about TJ Hall is he can be one of their best players in the defensive backfield, corners, safeties, you name it. So if that is indeed the case, that TJ Hall has taken that type of leap, then look, this is not anything groundbreaking here for me to tell you that they need him healthy. And it would be ideal if they could get him, some amount of snaps versus Albany before you obviously got to take the show on the road in week 2 against a very good Iowa State team. Hey, catch the show if you missed it. Jake Brend, we had Cyclone Fanatics, Jake Brend on right off the top tonight to give us the lowdown on what he expects, how the fan base feels about the Iowa State Cyclones going into this 2025 season. And, of course, they've got a whopper right from the word go against Kansas State, that week 0 date in Dublin versus Kansas State, top 25 showdown. So we had a nice chat with Jake Brend of Cyclone Fanatic of Iowa Everywhere. So if you missed it, of course, just search Iowa at the Voice of College Football on YouTube, and you can watch us back with Jake Brend or anywhere you consume your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, you name it. You can catch Iowa Primetime Live. Just search Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Go ahead and buy a Super Thanks, which directly supports us, Iowa Primetime Live and Iowa at the Voice of College Football. So not just Zach and myself, but Corey Brada, Mark right here at the Voice of College Football, all of us. We appreciate it. Until Thursday night, when we rehash some of what Kirk Ferentz thought from Kids Day at Kinnick and the other developments over the course of this week. We'll see you on Thursday night. Everybody have a wonderful week. Zach, good to hang out with you as always, my friend. Great job tonight for Jake.
Always a pleasure, Josh. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine, my friend. And to all of you in the chat, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll see you on Thursday night, 6 o'clock, right back here, Iowa Primetime Live. For Jake, for Zach, I'm Josh Helmer. Go Hawks, everybody. So long.